Hi, I'm Dave Bishop, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's November 9th, 2020. I'm John Swinimer. If you have a comment, criticism, or question, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Dave Bishop about WhitCAF 2020. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. And don't forget to check out the new YouTube channel, too. Hosted by the Whitby Library in Whitby, Ontario, the annual Comic Arts Festival celebrates comic book creators and makers in a variety of fun and entertaining activities, including exhibits, panels, readings, artist alley, contests, and more. Dave is a Pickering, Ontario illustrator who takes great joy in self-publishing comic books. His publishing history includes Art Duties on True Patriot Presents Crude, written by Fred Kennedy for Chapter House, and Morte, written by Kevin Joseph and published by Source Point Press. He's also the artist on Amazing Hockey Stories series, written by Lorna S. Nicholson and published by Scholastic Canada. This series covers the stories of Connor McDavid, Haley Wickenheiser, P.K. Subban, and now Mitch Marner. So without further ado, here's my chat with Dave Bishop about WhitCAF 2020. So Dave Bishop, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
John, thank you for inviting me. I always enjoy our chats.
I appreciate it.
Good to chat with you again.
Absolutely. So I'm wondering if you could talk about the newest project that you're promoting.
Well, I got a couple of things on the go. The new book that just came out was my Scholastic book featuring Mitch Marner. It is the fourth book I've done in the Amazing Hockey Stories series, written by Lorna S. Nicholson, who's written a ton of stuff.
It's very topical.
Yeah. And then I've also recently released a little 12-page Ghost in the Alley, but that one I just sort of released online and sent it to people, and just for fun, really. Because I was watching, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Extraction with
yes.
Chris Hemsworth. Yeah, so I've been wanting to do this story featuring this character for a long time, and I just really enjoyed the choreography in it. And I thought, yeah, what if I did like a 12-page fight scene, something like that? I thought that would be cool. So that sort of inspired me to do that. So, dipping my toe in one pool over here and another pool over here with the kids' comics.
Oh, very good. Very good. So I want to take a step back and ask you maybe about how you got your start in making comic books.
It's something I've been drawing as long as I can remember. And, I'd be in, I think high school is when I first really went to town making comics. And I would make comics and I'd just pass it around in my classroom, and my buddies would read it, and we'd all have a good laugh. It's like, yeah, that's cool. It'd be cool if we did this. And, just not really knowing anything about making comics. But I remember, I think the first comic I did was like set in the future, and there were two guys who, I don't know, like Tango and Cash or something like that, But one of them had a talking gun, like a sentient gun. Yeah, so his gun had this whole AI, and that was his gun was his best friend. And the other guy was just sort of the typical anti-hero. It was terribly childish and immature, but that's what you do when you're a teenager, right? Yeah, it was terrible.
But that was a good start, though, right? Like you were it was
enthusiastic.
Something. Your school chums were liking it. You got some positive feedback, and you kept on doing it.
When you're in high school and you're good at drawing, people know you as the guy who's good at drawing. So there's not too many people in your school who are really good at drawing. And then if you decide, you want to get better, let's say you go to art college, and the thing about that is then you're surrounded by people who are also good at drawing, right? So you kind of feel like you're not as special anymore. So as amazing as you thought you were, you start to understand that you have a lot to learn. Like when you go to school for anything, when you have an interest in something, when you start going to school that specializes in that, you realize that there's so much more to it than you thought. Because especially when you're that young, you think you know everything. You have all the answers. You know how good you are. But really, when you jump into that sort of specialized pool, you see how much better everybody else is. And then you have two ways you can go. You can say, I want to be as good as those people, or you can say, I'll never be as good as those people, I give up. Right?
True.
Or, I mean, technically you could also say, oh, those people suck, I'm better than them, but that never really does you any good.
No. Right? Practice makes perfect, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, with that in mind, what advice would you have for newcomers wanting to make comic books?
I would say just do it. Like, I can't tell you, like, we've met at conventions, and you know how it is talking to people at conventions. You can have some really, really fun conversations with people, but you can also have some very unfun conversations with people. And some of the most unfun conversations that I've had with people involves their big plan for comics. I have this big comic I'm going to make. Mm-hmm. The key is I'm going to make it. And they have this big sort of epic story that they want to make, and they tell you about it, and they will talk about it for like half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, however long. And the thing is, if it's taking you that long to pitch your story, it's probably not that good. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So if you want to make comics, and let's say you've never made comics before, just do like a 5-page comic, do a 10-page comic, 12-page comic, whatever. Like, I've been making comics for years now, and I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a pro, not like some people. I mean, I do my best, but I'll still do 12-page. Like Ghost in the Alley was just a 12-page comic because there's a story I wanted to tell. You know, so start there. And if you can tell a story in 12 pages, then you can tell a story with 30 pages, or you can tell a story with 40 pages. But there's not that pressure to make some 100-page epic story or 12-issue epic story. You can just start small, and you can still tell a story. When we've talked about Of Stone before in our previous chats, and that was, I think it was like a 21-page comic I did, you know, and that was like a one and done story. Like, that was it. I did it, and that was it. There was more to that story that I wanted to tell, so I added on to it, and then it turned into, you know, a 100-page graphic novel, and there's still more that I want to tell. So
right,
you know, I can continue with that. But it all starts from something small.
Right.
So do that something small. So then when you have that something small done, you can say, I've completed something. You know,
that's good advice.
Yep. You have something to show. So if you say, like, say you're a writer and you want to work with an artist, if you have a script or you've written a comic, even if it's only 12 pages with another artist, you could say, hey, I worked on this. Why don't you check it out and see if you want to draw what I write? Or, you know, if you're an artist and you have a little 12-pager and some artist says, oh, like, what's your style? Like, let me see what you did. You have something to show for it. You don't have to spend years doing this massive, massive story that, you know, the bigger the story is, the more likely it is you'll get bored of it and not finish it.
That's true. That's very good advice, for sure. Yeah. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about libraries and library events like WhitCAF and others, and what role they play in fostering comic books and their creation.
I think what's cool about libraries is they're open to everyone. And I mean, the Comic-Cons and the comic conventions, they're open to everyone too, but they're kind of specialized in a way. Whereas these library events are really open to people who are reading. So you get a wide range of people in there who may not even know that it's happening, you know, and they'll come in and, you know, they'll meet artists, they'll meet writers, they'll just meet people, and it's a lot more intimate, and it can allow for like a deeper discussion or engagement between both sides of the table.
That's good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, something like WhitCAF, I know they do a really, really good job of promoting it, and they have their panels and discussions, and, you know, they really reach out to their library audience. and they promote it and they talk about it, and they, you know, when they have panels or they have artist discussions or when they do anything, you know, they really engage their audience. They know their audience, and that's key for just about anywhere.
Absolutely, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you have any favorite memories from past library events that you like to share.
I think it was at WhitCAF. I did a discussion about hockey comics,
Mm-hmm.
and that, you know, I've drawn a few of those, and so that's really fun because the God's honest truth is I don't really know a lot about hockey, you know, but one of the great things about drawing stuff that you don't know is that it forces you to learn. You know, like when you write and draw your own comics, you tend to fall into a pattern of, okay, I'm only going to write scenes that I know I can draw. But when you work with another writer, the writer may not know or care what you can and can't draw. This is the scene that they want to do. So it forces you to draw something that you may not be comfortable with or you may not know how to draw. But once you start drawing it, you know, you learn. So that was the hockey comics experience with me. And I did another one with Megan Carter, Scott Chandler, and Fred Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was moderated by Andrew Young from Geek Hard. And that was just about making your own comics. And it was a really great and lively discussion because you had like a wide range of people with their various experiences making comics. I mean, you know, we talked about our trials and tribulations and failures and successes, etc. But I think the big takeaway, like, there's no big secret to it. You just got to put in the work.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that a lot of people took from that is, you know, just taking the work. Actually, you know, you're asking me about my favorite library memories. There was one I remember I had to judge. There were a number of comics. Like, people could make their own comics and bring them into the library.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so myself and I think Jay Torres were a couple of the judges for it. And so we would go through each of these comics. And it was really, really fun to see what people were doing because, you know, you had superhero comics, you had slice of life comics, you had sort of like weird and hard to figure out comics, you had comics written by, you know, 6-7-year-old kids, you had comics written by like 40-year-old grown-ups.
Okay, yeah.
It was just a wide range of all sorts of comics, and I think that's one of the wonderful things and why I enjoyed it so much is just being able to read this wide range of comics that people had made. And the important thing is that they made them. They're done.
Right. Yep.
Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Going back to what I said, like, they didn't have to be these big epic stories. They're able to tell a story in just a few pages.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was I think that was probably my favorite memory.
Cool. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about the Bitch Marner project. I'm wondering if you have any other projects on the go that you can talk about.
The one I'm working on right now is I'm trying to put together all the issues we did for Crude, because those were released online in various chapters as part of True Patriot Presents. But we're just trying to put it all together into one full story. And I don't know how that's going to be released or what we're going to do with that, but I mean, it's definitely going to be printed up, and we're going to see if we can add some stuff to it to sort of beef up the story a little bit.
Sounds good. So where can people buy your comic books online?
Amazon has all my hockey books. You can just go on there, and of course they deliver just about everywhere, so you can always get that stuff there. For my Source Point Press book Morte, which I did with Kevin Joseph, I know we've talked about, you can go to the SourcePointPress.com website, go to their store, and you can order it there. I don't know if they have many copies left, but they may. And that was one of my favorite stories to draw. So if you're interested in something a little bit different, I would definitely check that out. It's a silent comic. It's a comic without any words, so you don't have to worry about reading, but you do have to pay attention to the panels to really understand and follow the story. And I've had quite a few people actually tell me that they've gone through the story a few times and just told me that it's one of those stories where they they pick up different things every time they read through it. So it's kind of fun to hear.
Cool. Good stuff. Yeah. Well, Dave, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
I would say if you want to make comics, then just make something. I work with kids a lot. And these kids, they love to draw. And they recently just got into drawing their own comics. And there's this one boy, I think he's about 10 years old. And he drew a 30-page comic. 30 pages for a 10-year-old boy. Like that, to me, that was impressive. And I took it and I asked him if I could photocopy it. And he said, yeah. So I photocopied it and then I laminated it because we have to make sure that, because in our classrooms we can't have books because of the whole COVID-19 thing. So if you laminate it, I can actually disinfect it and wipe it down and kids can read it. So I laminated it and did the 3-hole punch and put it in a 3-ring binder and I handed it to him. And I said to this boy, I said, guess what? He's like, what? I said, you just self-published your first comic. And man, you should have seen his eyes light up like he'd never even considered that.
Right.
But really, that's what he did. That's exactly what he did. So I'm telling you that if this little 10-year-old boy can write and draw a 30-page comic, and if that's what you want to do, then you can do that. That's all it takes. And like, especially now with the internet, you can post it online. I see people doing their comics in Instagram, and they just do like 5-6 panels at a time, and you just swipe through as you're reading through. That's self-publishing a comic. That totally works, right? So just find a way to do it and just do it.
Thanks to Dave for the chat. You can discover more about Dave on Twitter at Renerd, that's RENERD, and on Instagram at RenerdBishop, and online at renerd.com. And you can discover more about WhitCAF 2020 at whitbylibrary.ca/WhitCAF. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to the video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2020.